We talk a lot about bridging divides, but a big part of the problem is that most Americans don't even know this movement exists. Today's guest has spent years inside the media and tech ecosystem, MTV, Facebook, national movements, asking a hard question. How do we scale belonging, not outrage? This is a conversation about storytelling, results, and what it will take to make depolarization impossible to ignore. Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate The Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The Derate The Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful Derate the Hate episode. So let's get to it. Today I'm joined by Tom Fishman, someone whose journey into depolarization didn't come from theory, but from experience. Tom grew up in Queens, learned early what it means to live across difference, and then went on to work at the center of modern media and technology, from MTV to Facebook, right as the attention economy was taking shape. He saw the promise and the damage. In this conversation, we talk about what we're calling the air game of bridge building, why dialogue alone isn't enough, why depolarization needs a killer app, and how storytelling, media, and tangible results can move this work from the margins to the mainstream. We explore how polarization has shifted from left versus right to top versus bottom, why belonging is the unmet human need driving so much anger and loneliness, especially among young men, and how that insight led Tom to write the book, The Great Boys Book. This is a strategic conversation, but it's also deeply human. It's about proving that bridge building isn't just kumbaya, it actually works. Let's get into it with my friend, Tom Fishman. Here we go. Tom Fishman, thank you for joining me on the Derate The Hate podcast. So good to see you today.
Thanks, Will, for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you.
The ProHuman Foundation series is something I started a while back. Many of the DTH listeners know, or I'm sure all the DTH listeners know, that I sit on the board of advisors for the ProHuman Foundation, something I'm very passionate about. And Tom, you just joined us in that board of advisors, and excited to have you here today to kind of talk about your story and your journey in this space.
Yeah, here. And yeah, even before we kick off, we were just saying earlier, I want to say it while we're recording, just a thank you. I think what you do for the space, I think what you do at Braver Angels, just incredibly valuable work for the cause of kind of overcoming toxic divides and, getting our country and communities on a better track. So a thank you to start, but yeah, let's take it where you want to go. I'm pumped to be here.
Grateful for those kind words, man. So let's start with a little bit of your story, Tom, because you've got many things that in this bridge building space and in the toxic polarization, depolarization space, things that you've done, with Starts With Us and the Builders movement and things like that. Let's start with a bit of your story and kind of tell me what brought you to this this space, the need to get involved in taming toxic polarization?
Yeah, yeah. So it all starts in Queens, New York. I'm a guitar player from Queens at my core. This is my my identitarian sort of bent. Is that's growing up in one of the most populous, diverse, yet somehow crowded parts of the country and the world. Uh, getting along with people and coexisting with people across lines of difference is not a nice to have. That is a survival mechanism from kind of, not getting your ass whooped in the schoolyard all the way to, getting along, just cultures of immigrants that live next to each other, work with each other. This is just a part of, it's a skill, I think, that you build. And yeah, so I was a Jewish kid who went to a Catholic school, so there's just I think there were a lot of bridges that were a part of my life early on. And my sort of educational professional life led me into media, in the early, or I guess, the sort of mid to late aughts, when digital media and social media were becoming sort of professionalized and becoming a thing. And that was both, very exciting. And I joke sometimes that I remember distinctly, I'm old enough to remember when social media was fun. I can picture it like right now. And when it was just, goofy, but I was on the front lines, I think, early on, even in, kind of it was MTV for a long time, running digital media. And I was in the belly of the beast at Facebook for a while, doing interesting content work there. And so I was on the front lines of both sort of the good and the bad of what essentially are mobs, of like the kind of mob mentality that social media and that the internet can engender. And, I mean, it's just a matter of, I think, developing a facility with the sort of tools of the modern media and ecosystem and attention economy, and having done that for a while and sort of come to a point in, I think, my career, especially around, 2020, obviously a lot of unrest across many dimensions of societal life in the country, political, racial, gender, all manner of things like tearing at the fabric. And that was a time, I was sort of looking to kind of take these dark arts that I had learned and kind of point them at something positive and something powerful, and was able to, I joined what was called Starts With Us then, and is now the Builders Movement as this sort of inaugural and founding CEO, and worked there to basically, build in the sort of first 4 years of its life to sort of build up what ultimately is a media engine that can help shift narratives for people in the mainstream, but has, many now pieces of sort of civic and educational components to its programming as well. So that was my path from a guitar player in Queens to depolarization.
Right. No, that's fascinating. And you mentioned MTV, and one of the things that I think about is all the different the cycle of things that have happened at MTV over the course of the years, and now I see MTV, I think, is going away. And that's definitely a conversation I want to have with you at another time, because I want to hear about the MTV stuff, but not today. What I want to hear about today, Tom, is you said that you were at Facebook for a while. You remember when social media was fun, and there's a lot of us that are old enough to remember what the world was like before social media. Hell, I remember that. I remember MTV when MTV first happened. When it was the first thing, when it actually played music videos. I didn't have a television, and we certainly didn't have cable when I was a kid. But I remember going over to my cousin's place and seeing MTV for the first time, Michael Jackson and things like that.
Yeah.
And the way that the world has changed in so many years since then has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then the onset of social media back in the like you said, the mid aughts, and when I was in high school was when the social, or not social media, when I was in high school was when the internet first started becoming a thing. And I remember sitting in my science class, and I can't remember the science teacher's name at the time, but he talked about this internet being this new amazing thing.
Yeah.
that was going to put everybody in contact with each other at some point. And he showed us what this modem was. It was like a 28K dial-up modem.
Yeah.
And and I just, in my mind, I'm rolling around all the different things that have changed in human interaction since then. And when we think about living now in the age where humans are more connected than they've ever been, we also live in an age when people are lonelier than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Talk to me about social media and what has changed in that whole that human condition and the way that we interact with people, and then give me, kind of talk to me in your mindset how that has turned into something toxic. Because what I want to try and get our conversation to is, you and I are media people. How do we reverse that? So let's first start talking about the most connected age, that humans are more connected now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
But we're lonelier than we've ever been.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I kind of want to answer it at two altitudes. There are the ways in which we connect sort of directly with each other, and then the ways that we're connected through narrative, through culture, through history, through a shared sense of history, through a shared sense of what's possible on a path forward. And one of the most exciting things in the early sort of, social internet era was this notion of democratization, right, of media, right? We didn't need elite sort of institutions to necessarily be the siphons for information that we all got. And there are things about that are undoubtedly good, that there's, sort of more options, I think, for reporting and for storytelling, for community building, these sorts of things. But I think it unquestionably has come at a cost, right? I think without shared sources of truth, a shared set of facts, and more broadly, with a sort of fragmentation of a sense of, a lot of things, but I'll take a big one, right? A sense of what America is and has been, of what the American dream is and the possibility to live it on the path forward. That is very disorienting, I think, for a social animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then within the context of that sort of unmooring from a shared narrative, a shared context, a shared sense of where we've been and where we might be able to go, is you just talk to people less, right? The self-selection and the tribalism that kind of social media makes possible, kind of a well-worn topic, right? That we find our bubbles of the people who affirm our beliefs, and that sort of intermingling with a physical sorting. We live near, people who think differently than we do less and less. A very common and a true sort of aphorism in this sort of depolarization and bridging space is that it's hard to hate up close, that when we get to know people who are different than us, we find common ground. That becomes less and less possible when we're sorted away from people who are different than us, either digitally and then sort of physically. So you have at these two levels a loneliness. You are lonely in a sort of kind of historical and cosmic sense because you're unmoored from a shared narrative of country, society, history,
right?
And we're interfacing with each other less. And in the vacuum of that, in the vacuum of not knowing what my country is, or has been, or how to think about it, in the vacuum, or knowing less, or having less of a shared sense, in the vacuum of not necessarily having a sense of where I can go, in the vacuum of not interfacing with people who are different than me, we do what humans always do, usually with vacuums of information, and we fill it with anxiety and fear. and I laugh. It's not funny. These are the things that we then paint a broad picture. We catastrophize. That's a lizard brain thing to keep ourselves safe, as we assume the worst. And that, I think, is the path from kind of the media ecosystem to the sort of primordial sort of elements of the toxicity that we feel right now.
Yeah. I think some hugely important points there, Tom. The oversimplification of thing, and then the I don't know, a lot of different ways that I can think about this right now, but so the media, politicians, social media, one of the big problems that I've seen and that I've been pointing out for years is something that I call FOG: fear, outrage, and grievance. And it's this FOG model that is used, unfortunately, whether intentional or unintentional. I mean, I think it can be argued, who does why, what. I try not to ascribe motives to people for certain things, but the fog model undoubtedly keeps us separated, keeps us divided. People in our politics, people in our media, outrage entrepreneurs on social media, keep us scared, keep us mad, and keep us focused on our grievances over what we should be grateful for, our grievances over gratitude. One of the things that I want to be able to do in this space, and I think it's something that you and I have a very strong commonality in, is the idea of a strong air game for the depolarization space, bridging divides through media. But as somebody who worked at Facebook, and I don't pretend to know all the things that you did at Facebook, but algorithms are something that we have to deal with. The digital creators have to deal with algorithms and things like that. How do you think? Well, first of all, kind of give me your take on what you see as the air game needed in the depolarization space and the bridging space, what you see that as, and then how do we as creators in this space kind of overcome or beat the algorithms that promote or incentivize that fear, outrage, and grievance?
Yeah. So I think if a broad way to think about a theory of change is you can sort of contextualize maybe in the good old marketing funnel, right? Like some of your listeners will know this. Some of them, if they don't, then I'm jealous of them. But if, right. In the marketing funnel, it's like you badge the top of a funnel and you try to reach your marketing an idea or a product. You reach as many people as you can so that they are just aware of the product. And then you bring them down into the funnel so that the awareness turns into consideration of the adoption or purchase of that product. And then further down, hopefully they quote unquote convert to a buyer or a purchaser or an adopter. And then ideally they advocate at the very bottom of the funnel. They love it so much. This thing is so great. And it goes back into the top of the funnel because they're telling people about it. And the funnel turns into a flywheel. It grows, right? When you have that happening. Right. And I think the air game for depolarization and for bridging, right? It's called sometimes, is a mechanism by which many, many, many people at the mainstream can become aware of a different kind of a mindset, a builder's mindset, a pro-human mindset that is, one, just very likely to be aligned with most people's kind of core values, that this is out there. Two, to combat narratives that it's not out there, that the whole world is polar. We know that the media ecosystem is generally a funhouse mirror. It doesn't do a great job reflecting the realities of most Americans, left, right, or in between, in terms of what their priorities are, what their values are. It flattens people out, right? It flattens ideas out. It's just the nature of the medium. So if the air game is able to, at scale, give a broad swath of Americans across ideologies the sense that, oh, I can be in community with my fellow Americans in a way that prioritizes things like, problem solving, things like, the things that we all want. We want to be able to go to the doctor when we get sick. We want our kids to do better than we did. We want fair application of the rule of law. We want economic opportunity. Like, there's just so much in common that air game allows the depolarization movement to sort of drive awareness that there's a community of people for whom this is not only a common set of values, but that this set of values, when put into practice, has the potential to change political incentives. If we're going to sort of stop consuming media, if we're going to vote out politicians who are conflict entrepreneurs or dividers by trade, if we're going to economically affect, for example, media companies because they're divisive and sort of conflict entrepreneurs in their own ways. So you need, in order to affect systems and structures at scale, a large group of people to operate in a coordinated way. So the media air game for depolarization makes people aware of the existence of this growing movement and of its growing set of wins to actually affect structural, communal, political change. It's hard to do that without the numbers. And there's so much. Having Braver Angels, an organization that for a long time has been, the sort of grassroots backbone of depolarization, actually bringing people together, right? That's such important work. And if only everyone in the country could see that happening, then our sense of what's possible maybe starts to not only become more optimistic, more pro-human and sort of builder oriented, but also, something that we share. Maybe it starts to combat the idea that we don't have a shared sense of what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That shared sense of what's possible, Tom, is just, it's so hugely important. And one of the things that I've been saying quite often recently is this depolarization space, this bridge building movement can no longer be like a secret society. We talked about before our recorded part of our conversation, different places where I've, had been speaking and things like that. And one of the things that I always hear when I'm out speaking at places is, we didn't even know that there were other people out there like me. I thought I was the only one that felt this way or wanted this thing. And even Braver Angels, which is America's largest cross-partisan grassroots organization, bringing people together, bridging these divides. We got 15,000 plus members around the country and 125-ish alliances. And there's still I run into people every single day that just don't know that this thing is a thing. And the awareness piece is so hugely important when we think about that funnel and how we open up the top of that funnel to everybody so they at least see that the funnel is there. The consideration piece, everything else, that all comes down to content and the kind of content we're putting out there and the voices that are out there doing it. But that shared awareness that this thing is a thing is the huge thing. So when we think about what that air game needs to look like, how do we build that out, Tom? From somebody with your kind of experience, what does that look like? How do we build that thing out?
Yeah. So I think that there's sort of two paths I'd go here. One is leaning into the inherent beauty of potential stories to tell in the depolarization space. I think there's one of the, a common refrain and a common concern in the depolarization space is that it seems like a sort of kumbaya-ish, let's all get along. Depolarization is full of friction. It's full of tension. Mm-hmm. It's full of the things that make great stories, have always made great stories, regardless of the medium, right? Families, feeling tension, torn apart, coming back together. We see this in the news all the time. School systems upended, political strife, all these things. These things are fundamentally interesting. And do you harness that, to what end do you harness that interest? Is it to sow fear? Or is it, and this goes to the second thing, is it to demonstrate the ways in which having a kind of, the growth mindset, that ProHuman Foundation is sort of bringing into schools through curricula, that the builder's mindset, these sorts of, that these things are not just nice to haves. They're not just kumbaya. There's a small number of people who that's enough. It's like, yes, this is a good way to be. We need millions upon millions, tens of millions more, like people thinking not just a nice way to be. This is a good thing to do, which means in our minds, and we need to believe that appealing to our pro-human mindset is the best possible path to solve problems that we all feel. We need proof. We need value proposition. This is, again, I'm trafficking in the marketing language, but when I see, for example, I'll use a builder's example. There's a program called Citizen Solutions that convenes people at the state level from all aspects. They just got done in Texas, convening people all over the state around healthcare. Truly far-flung corners of Texas that have tons of overlap on different elements of sort of healthcare policy. Get them together, share experiences, work together. That is fundamentally useful in and of itself as a sort of policy, a sort of citizens assembly style mechanism. But when the world can see that, when the world sees that not only is common ground available, but solutions are possible based on people's willingness to work together across common ground, that changes things. That's turns into, oh, that's a nice thing to have, to, I want to do that. And we have healthcare issues in my state, right? We have affordability issues in my state. Where's my citizens assembly? Where's my citizen solutions? And the air game allows us to turn what is it's a big market of people who might like to do this into a movement of people who are actually doing it because they believe what I believe to be true because I've seen it. I suspect we share this, which is that these mindsets, this is the way forward. This is the way to solve the problems that afflict us across lines of difference. The reason we have in New York, in my home state, people in both traditionally red and blue districts who have voted for AOC and Zoran Mamdani and voted for Donald Trump is because they are united by the problems that they face with affordability and the desire for a certain kind of a change. So we know that it's possible, but what is the path forward to actually solving those problems? We believe that is the actual living and practice of a builder's mindset, of a pro-human mindset.
Yeah. No, you bring up the citizen solutions, and Braver Angels actually has a new program that we're very excited about called Citizen Led Solutions. One of the things that I've been talking about for a long time in this movement is, one of the big problems within the bridging movement is there's not enough conservative voices like myself in this space. And one of the things that I've always said is, if you want to bring in conservatives, you have to show them real tangible results for the efforts that they're putting in. Conservatives like results. Talking is fine and talking is a certain thing. And it's important. That dialogue is always going to be important, Tom. But obviously, tangible results for the work that's being put in is always going to be a winning USP, unique selling proposition, when it comes to conservatives.
Yeah.
And citizen-led solutions to common cause problems close to home. I love the example of the healthcare thing in Texas, but it doesn't have to be healthcare. It can be something as simple in your community as a roundabout or a stop sign or a tax levy or whatever the case may be. When you start to show people that common ground is not kumbaya. Common ground is actually being able to have dialogue about contentious issues in a non-contentious way and come to a results-based solution. We start to win. And then taking that to the air game, right? That funnel. How do we bring awareness to these things within our communities? So when we think about the citizen-led solutions to common cause problems close to home, that's when we start to bring in that wider swath of people.
That's right.
Because that's really it. It's not I don't think it's a super complicated thing. But then one thing I want to talk about real quick as we round out our time. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and so did you, but the algorithms in our social media and our media, especially our cable news media, which is often just a dumpster fire of toxic polarization in itself. But how do we take these citizen-led solutions to common cause problems, bring that awareness piece when the algorithms more incentivize, or the cable news media or the loudest voices in our politics actually are winning the air game with their fear, outrage, and grievance?
Yeah. I think therein sort of lies basically one of the toughest puzzles, but that if we look at certainly, I think builders and other organizations in our sort of field, broadly defined, it is possible to kind of harness the dynamics of the algorithm. They do reward sort of anger, outrage, polarization, but they do reward great storytelling. They do reward insight. They do reward surprise. They reward hope. And I think that those are things that if we can continue to bring to the fore, if we're, I wish I had a more sort of satisfying, but you sort of have to be facile at the dynamics of social media and try to harness them in the direction, get the wind in the direction of your sails. And that is, it can feel Faustian at times, because you don't want to put a flattened piece of information out into the world, but you only get so many characters or so many images in the carousel or so many things. So one of the things you're constantly trying to balance is how to responsibly tell a story, not be a part of the problem that you're, but I think that builders and other organizations, we, prove every day, and that shows in the growth of these communities, that it is very possible that there's, this proves out the market, right? And I think that if we are effectively illuminating, demonstrating, and activating, if we're illuminating the problem with insight, stats on the sort of perception gaps that we have between each other, interesting sort of case studies, interesting people, showing a huge diversity of people so that any American on average might look at a feed and see a piece of themselves in the depolarization movement. Like, that is really important. You're sort of illuminating, you're demonstrating that this is actually a workable set of solutions, that this mindset can lead to real results, like you said. And then you're activating by giving people things to do. Hey, you can join a Braver Angels chapter. You can join a Bridge USA chapter. If you're, on a college campus, you can bring the ProHuman Foundation's curriculum into your school. You can, follow and sign up for, there are many things you can do to continue to be aware, to grow your skill set, and to continue to then, it's that next step is, how does that sort of movement, that collective of people, start to exert actual political will, actual force against the things that shape the structure of society, from the filling the potholes in the roundabout in our community all the way up to, the highest elected offices. Is like, we just need to, and I mean, that just requires a proper movement. And I think to harness the algorithms is sort of step one.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the power of storytelling, Tom, is always going to be a winner. When people share their stories, every one of us has a story. Every one of us has been through storms. We've had our struggles, and the stories that we tell and to shape that narrative. And when we start to tell those stories of collaborative action, of citizen-led solutions, of getting real things done, we start to win that narrative, and we can. And then it's exponential. We start to grow.
That's right.
We start to grow. We start to scale. Tom, this has been an incredible conversation. Again, went way too fast, and there's so many things that you and I can get into, and I'm sure we'll get into them later, because this is the first of many conversations, I'm sure. But yeah, collaborative partnerships. One of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation is the right stories, the right collaborative partnerships. We can win this battle. There's a lot of things to be hopeful for, a lot of things to be grateful for, and it's people like you in this space that are doing amazing things. Organizations like ProHuman Foundation, Braver Angels, Builders. We're all going in the same directions, even if it's different lanes, and we can make some incredible things happen. So thank you very much, Tom Fishman.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much for having me, Wilk. And I just wanted, the thing that I'm going to take away from you, and this one I always take away so much hearing your podcast, listening to you talk about this stuff, but results, right? Depolarization, these mindsets, these practices, they drive results. And we know that to be true, those of us who are doing the work on the ground, and we just got to keep, catapulting that into the air game and making sure that tens of millions of Americans know that. But yeah, we got our work cut out for us, but thank you so much for the time. Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to the next one. Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the Derate The Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together, so please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week, saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.